entrepreneur, and I'm sure most of you already know, but it's an individual who creates a new business, bearing most of the risk and enjoying most of the rewards. The entrepreneur is commonly seen as an innovator, a source of new ideas, goods, services, business, or procedures. Now, in a nutshell, an entrepreneur is anyone who started a business. So it could be a mom and pop, it could be a one-person business, or it could be a large corporation. The founder, the starter, is typically known as an entrepreneur. Now, an intrapreneur, it's, according to Investopedia, is an employee who is tasked with developing an innovative idea or project within a company. The intrapreneur may not face the outside risks or the outsized rewards of an entrepreneur. However, the intrapreneur has access to the resources and capabilities of an established company. In a nutshell, an intrapreneur is an entrepreneur within an organization. So that's pretty much the two basic differences. So how do these compare? And I'm sure in an audience of this size, there are some people who are considering becoming an entrepreneur, and there are some people who prefer the comforts of being inside of an organization. So an intrapreneur, the resources that you need are already in your current organization. So there's less risk to you. So everything that you need will be found within your organization. There's an existing brand to build upon, an infrastructure for marketing and client attraction already in place. This is important, again, because brand building is a lot of work. So pretty much as an intrapreneur, the only brand that you're going to be concerned with will be your own personal brand, but not a company brand. There's little to no risk. The risk is limited to your personal reputation. So if you're successful or if you fail, really it's your own personal brand that would be at stake. But there's not necessarily a risk to the organization. Not really, very little. And the rewards are limited to bonuses, increased compensation, but it may not be in proportion to your contribution, meaning that you may come up with a game-changing idea and you will be rewarded for it, but it may not be in proportion to what you have contributed. So that's the life of an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, you need to find your own resources, investors, or funding. This is not always easy. For those of you who may have dabbled in entrepreneurism or are currently an entrepreneur, you know that in a startup phase, many times starting out, you're using your own funds, you're using credit cards, you're using family funds, you're asking friends, you may have some investors. Very few banks are willing to give you that upfront cost, even if you have a great business plan, because banks tend to be a little bit more conservative with new businesses, and for good reason. You have to do your own marketing and client attraction, and this could take several months, years to be established. I recently met with a woman who is a new HR consultant. She went out on her own, and it was about a year and a half out, and she was not having a lot of success. And when I dug deeper, her main issue was lack of clients. So I asked her, what was she doing? What was her marketing strategy like? And unfortunately, she did not have a strategy. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur, marketing is going to be real key, because without clients, there is no business. As an entrepreneur, you take on all the risks. Okay, so if your business fails, if your business goes bust, then you pretty much go bust. You take on all the risks. But on the upside, the rewards are huge for you if your company is successful. And this is the attraction for many entrepreneurs. They want to make it big. And so if they make it big, the rewards are big. But there's always that flip side that you take on all the risks. If it goes down, you go down. So let's introduce the intrapreneur. So intrapreneurs, is your organization ready to embrace you? This is very, very important. Culture is important in an organization, especially if it's considering bringing on an entrepreneurship program. some of you guys may be in HR who are looking to make this be part of your your work culture. Some of you may want to become entrepreneurs in your company. I would say that in my research, I have not seen many HR personnel going into the entrepreneurial space, but you never know. Many times HR is responsible for bringing in entrepreneurs if the company has that culture. My own personal story of embracing entrepreneurship with my team began when I started a nonprofit in 2003. And by 2011, I had to get back to the law. I actually, have two major roles. I run a law firm with my husband. I've been doing that since 1997. But 5 years in, I went off to start a nonprofit. But during that time, I developed 4 managers. And in 2011, 8 years in, I had to return back to the law. And I brought my managers together, and my message to them was pretty much this. You are going to become the CEO now of your own division. I won't be here. You're not a CEO. You're responsible for hiring, for firing. You are responsible for taking certain risks up to certain dollar amounts without checking in. The only thing I ask is that you work as a cohesive team because we have a cohesive mission. And that was pretty much it. And that was a very successful venture for a few years until I brought in an executive director who did not have an entrepreneurial vein. So she changed the culture, and within, I would say, 3 to 4 months, I lost 3 managers. So culture is very important for entrepreneurs. I would say there are 4 main things that you have to do to set the tone in your company. And let me just say this, culture comes from the top. It doesn't come from the HR department. It comes from the CEO, founder, that top person. And it's usually a mirror image of their own personal values. So for an entrepreneurial culture to be successful, there has to be a feedback loop, a pipeline in place so the entrepreneurs know what they're expected to do and if they are on track. There should be explicit goals set so everyone is on the same page. There should be an emphasis on individual and personal responsibility for the outcomes. Entrepreneurs are usually given a task or a project to work on or to create or to develop or to innovate, but there should be, they should know that they are responsible for the outcomes, that the results will be their own. And when I say by their own, if it fails, it's on them. If it's successful, it's also on them. The reward to the entrepreneur should be in proportion to their results. I have known of companies who have brought this program in, and the entrepreneur or the entrepreneurial group created massive change, saving them millions of dollars. However, the rewards are not necessarily in proportion to what they have done, but it should be, because that will keep the entrepreneur happy. There are some companies who actually recruit for entrepreneurial skill sets because what they're looking for is for someone with an entrepreneurial mind, but who are more conservative and do not want to bear much of the risks. Having the right mindset is important for your boss or your organization before you venture into entrepreneurship, into entrepreneurism. Big companies that embrace entrepreneurship will thrive. That's according to an article in Entrepreneur magazine in 2015. Popular companies like Google, Apple, Virgin Atlantic, and Sony, these companies designate 10 to 20% of their workspace and their work time for entrepreneurial activities. The Sony PlayStation, the Facebook likes button, and the Google Gmail all came about from entrepreneurs within those companies. So this is something that you really have to know is your organization ready to embrace you? So you are an entrepreneur if you feel that there's more that you can add to the brain trust of your company. So if you feel like, there's more that I can do beyond being a manager, then you're perhaps having the stories of an entrepreneur. If If you currently take bold action within your current role and are not afraid to test the boundaries, again, you're having the makings of an intrapreneur. You have a strong belief in yourself and in your abilities. This is another word for this is confidence. You're confident in what you can bring to the table. You believe you can create meaningful change if given the opportunity. Entrepreneurship is all about creating something new from something that's established. So if you believe that there's a better way or a better product or a better system that you can create within your organization, if you were just given the opportunity that you could create real meaningful change, then you're perhaps an entrepreneur. Now, on the other hand, you're an entrepreneur if you are ready to strike out on your own, even if you are afraid. Now, remember, entrepreneurs have this bent, but they prefer to be in the confines of a company. They prefer to not bear the risk. But an entrepreneur, their mindset is like, look, I want to strike out on my own. I don't care if I make it or if I don't. I am not afraid. If you feel like your passion and dreams deserve a vehicle that you have total control over, in other words, if you want to make, if you want to work 80 hours a week, that's your call. If you want to work, 10 hours a week, that's your call. You have total control over your life. You're an entrepreneur if you're betting on yourself and on those you choose to take on this journey. So you're betting on yourself. You say, you know what, I have the abilities, I have the skills, I have the know-how, I can do this. And I may go solo or I may bring some people along with me who I believe share my vision and my passion, but I'm betting on team me or on team us. Things can go amazingly well or amazingly bad, very bad, but you are okay with the risk. So if you have an entrepreneurial spirit and things that can go amazingly well or very bad, but you are okay with the risk, then you're more suited to be an entrepreneur. So I'm going to talk about in the next few slides the kind of mindset and maybe attributes that you should have to be successful in either of these areas. Having a success mindset is important. And why is this important? Because people follow leaders. So if you're an entrepreneur within your company, having that success mindset is important. People follow leaders. People will not follow unsuccessful people who lack confidence. So how do you develop this success mindset? It takes work. It takes work. You see, mindset, there's no lack of negativity around. So having a success mindset really starts with having a personal development plan. Surrounding yourself with people who are successful, perhaps engaging a mentor or a coach, someone who can aid you on your journey, someone who can help you as you're faced with the challenges, as you're faced with the negativity, being able to counter that with that mindset and that belief in yourself. This is going to be key in whether you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. This is going to be key in really working on the mind. There are even mindset seminars that you can attend, but this is so important because there's so many challenges in business, whether in or outside of the company, that this is going to be something you need to really work on. It's the same thing for entrepreneurs. Confidence and courage are going to be key factors in your success. And when you step out there, bearing all the risk, you're going to have what we call courage to step out. Resilience is also key to prepare for your first setback or challenge, which is inevitable in business. You see, I didn't say may, happen in business. Your setback may happen. Your first setback will happen. And it will be the first of many setbacks. So being resilient and having a resilient mind is going to be key, having a strong mind. I would suggest, reading business books about other people who have fail and will come back from failure. Just cultivating that success mindset, that positive mindset is going to be very, very key. And I know I'm stressing it a lot because I've seen so many people give up in business at the first or the second challenge. Learning to see success in your failure is going to be key. Challenges are working for you, not against. You know, for you to see challenges as working for you and not against, again, is a mind trick. When things happen, you ask yourself, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this setback? Constantly looking at the negative as positives. Without a success mindset, you will have a quitting mindset. You will just simply quit. And that's not what we want as an entrepreneur or even as an intrapreneur. As an intrapreneur, your company, your CEO, they're depending on you. They trusted you with that responsibility. And as an entrepreneur, maybe you may have family depending on you. So a quitting mindset, will not work. Another thing is to be results driven. You see, we may have great leadership skills and be a wonderful risk taker with a success mindset. But if we're not delivering results for the company, we are not effective in that role. So any successful intrapreneur must deliver results for the organization. That's what you were tasked to do. Goal setting and goal achieving skills are important for this to happen. So let's say, for example, as an entrepreneur, your company said, listen, I want you to bring this product to market in 90 days. Well, I would say for your particular goal, you should have a personal goal of 60 days. It's tricking that mind again, being results driven. Whatever goal your company set, go a little bit more stringent for yourself so that you're having that mindset that, look, I'm here to deliver results. I'm going to deliver results not on time, but even before time if possible. Set aggressive goals that stretches you and which brings value to your organization. Very important. That's when we talk about the compensation, we talk about the rewards. Being results driven, taking those kinds of action is going to get you the compensation and the rewards that you're seeking. Again, you may need to enlist the help of a high-performance coach. There are many different types of coaches, There are goal-setting coaches, there are high-performance coaches, there are life coaches. As an intrapreneur, as an entrepreneur, I highly suggest having a high-performance coach. Someone's going to keep you accountable, who's going to stretch you, because the rewards and the benefits will far outweigh your investment. As an entrepreneur, being results driven are going to be key. I would suggest you create goals for your business in 3 initial areas. The first area is income. Entrepreneurs tend to confuse income with revenue. Income is what's left over after you've paid the expenses. Many times you'll see even on social media, this company brought in $1 million. That's wonderful. But how much did the founder or the entrepreneur, how much did they actually keep? If you're bringing in $1 million and you're spending $980,000 to make the $1 million, you're not profitable. So the million may sound great, but you have to keep an eye on that net income. For an entrepreneur, clients or contracts are the lifeblood of your enterprise. So having an effective and aggressive marketing plan to obtain clients is going to be important, using all angles, networking, social media, traditional media, email campaign, etc. I go back to that young lady who I'd met who was doing an HR consultant business. She was talented. She had great skills, but she did not have a marketing strategy. And when you get from behind the comforts of your company, where pretty much everything is handed, it's there for you. When you go out there as an entrepreneur, you have to remember, nothing is given to you. Your first client you have to really work hard for, and for every client after that. As a matter of fact, marketing should always be a line item on your company P&L. Keep an eye on your personal earnings. As an entrepreneur, I would suggest from the very beginning to set a salary for yourself. Many entrepreneurs forget this important piece, because the idea is that they're going out there and they're going to make something happen, and they fall in love with the business of doing a business. They fall in love with their passion. But at some point, they may look around and they realize, I'm not making any money, personal money. So even at the beginning, even if it's a modest salary, set yourself a salary, because that will give you the discipline and a goal to look toward, to say, listen, even if it's $20,000 for the year, put something down, because at the end of the year, you may find that you've made nothing. As a matter of fact, you may find that you are actually paying your company on a continuous basis to keep going. Nobody wants that. Okay. The next important skill for both is to have excellent people skills. So for the entrepreneur, I should say, think team building. See, silos may work if you are an entrepreneur, but the example that we have to most look for as a benchmark for entrepreneurial excellence is Google and the creation of the Gmail product, Google News and AdSense. These all came through entrepreneurs who were working together in groups. Google's policy is 4 to 20 usually for an entrepreneurial venture. So think team building. You may say, well, as an entrepreneur, I want to go up and I want to do this project. But whether you're working with your CEO or you're working with people, in a cross-functional team, think team building and think honing those people skills. Sometimes creative people, they actually lack that excellent people skills. This is something that you may want to just think about as well. Think diversity of ideas, diversity of age, diversity of culture, diversity even in the departments, like I said, cross-functional. Think diversity. I am a woman in my mid-50s, and I find I get some amazing ideas from a talented 25-year-old millennials. They have wonderful ideas, but I also work with a mentor who is 79 years old. So think diversity, think different viewpoints. This is going to be very important for you as an entrepreneur. And then important, think balance when working with the CEO. Remember, you are not the CEO. And although you and your team may hatch the next great idea, you are still not the CEO, and the lines of respect must always remain healthy for this to work. So think balance, when working with the CEO. These are all relational skills, relationship skills. Very, very important. As an entrepreneur, you're going to need to think collaboration, joint ventures, etc. Sometimes you may start out as a solo practitioner, solo person. And as women, you may even get registered as a woman-owned company or a minority-owned company. But sometimes when you're going after a big contract, you may be overlooked because of your size. So think collaboration from the get-go. Think, okay, who can I, collaborate with? Who can I do a joint venture project with? Who do I have synergy with? So be thinking broad even as you're small. Be thinking, how can I go after this contract? And the way how you can do that in many cases is to collaborate with somebody who's larger than you are. So think collaboration. You're going to need people skills for that. Think building a staff. You may start out small, but as you grow, you may find that you need an assistant. You may find that you need, other people, maybe a partner. So think building a staff and think what that looks like. It's important here as an entrepreneur to know from the very beginning what your mission is, what your vision is, and what your core values are. Because on these three foundations is how you should build your organization. So from the very beginning, as you're thinking about maybe stepping out to be an entrepreneur, what is your mission? What is your vision? And what are your personal core values? Because your personal core values will translate into your company's core values. So think building a staff and think, will the people who I'm going to work with or bring on board, do they share my vision, my mission, and my values? And that's why we have to have those in place before you actually bring anyone on. Think client relations. Again, I can't stress this enough. If you don't have clients, you don't have a business. So as you begin to get clients on board, which will be challenging to do, but as you get clients on board, you don't want to lose clients. So have a strategy for, client relations. Your first staff member should be someone who you trust with your clients, who can foster those relationships and maintain those relationships. So think client relations. And then think of the outside stakeholders, the banker, your CPA, your lawyer. Develop great relationships with your banker. You may need a loan. You may need a line of credit. So think relationships. Your CPA, you don't want to run afoul of the IRS. So you want to work with your CPA. You want to see, okay, if you're making money, how do I protect my money? How do I pay what I need to pay, and how do I keep what I should be keeping? Lawyer. I mentioned before that you may need to, enlist the aid of a partner. Well, you will need a lawyer for a partnership agreement. Working in the legal field for the past 20-something years, I have seen so many terrible contracts because people fail to get legal advice and they end up in a lot of trouble. And even if you're thinking of getting a partner, make sure that you have a partnership agreement in place so that if the partnership doesn't work out down the line, you have stuff in writing. So think bankers, CPA, lawyer, think having great relationships with these people. And now the skill that universal says, whether you're an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur, is leadership. Before you can lead others, you have to lead yourself. If you want to lead, invest at least 40% of your time in leading yourself. This is from D. Hop, the founder of Visa. Well, leadership. We can't talk about leadership enough. Develop your leadership skills. Ask yourself, what kind of a leader am I? And if you have a team, ask yourself or ask them to tell you what type of a leader they consider you to be. Become a perennial student of leadership. Read books. I actually recommend a book by Kuzis and Posner called The Leadership Challenge. It gives great examples of leaders who are doing wonderful things. So develop your leadership skills. You're going to need this as an entrepreneur, you're going to need this as an entrepreneur as well. Practice self-awareness, emotional intelligence. We've been hearing a lot about emotional intelligence and self-awareness. What is self-awareness? It's being aware. It's kind of self-explanatory. It's being aware of yourself and your emotion at any given time. How are you responding to the challenges? How are you responding to criticism? How are you responding to setbacks? Being self-aware. How are you coming across to your team? Practice that. Be vulnerable too. Be open. Be willing to admit mistakes. Be willing to take blame and ask for credit. These are the kind of skills that will endear you not only to your team, but to your stakeholders, to your customers, to those within and outside of your organization. Self-care. Self-care is very, very important. People who are driven to become entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs are usually A-type, purpose-driven people. And we tend to overlook self-care. Make sure that if you're planning to work 80 hours a week, which I don't recommend, but sometimes you can avoid it, to build in that time for yourself, that time for your meditation, that time for vacation, that time for that family time. Build margin into your schedule, just like you would for any project. Build that margin in. I would say for entrepreneurs especially, you can literally derail your company if you find yourself out of balance. You can become a very poor leader and truly derail your company. Less so for the entrepreneur because, you are in a structured environment. But for the entrepreneur, self-care is so important. And the next point is really work-life balance. Similar to self-care. You have a family. And again, sometimes in our journey and in our on our quest to start a new company or a new business, a new venture, a new career, go up the ladder, we can forget these important family relationships. And we may find that we may build a business but lose a family. And what we want to do is to build a business and a family at the same time. And you have to, it may be challenging, but it's something you need to be really aware of. In my coaching session sometimes with women, this has been a real struggle, for executive women and for entrepreneurs, having this work-life balance. And women may think it's easier on men, and it probably is, but it is what it is. You just have to make sure that as you're building your company, you're not ignoring that family relationship, because if your family relationship becomes derailed, so will your ventures. And the last one is succession planning and mentorship. Whether you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, you should always be thinking of what is your next step and who are you bringing up. So always be thinking succession planning, because especially if you want to put your name on a project that you're proud of. If something, heaven forbid, were to happen to you, what would happen if you weren't there anymore? Now, some entrepreneurs and some intrapreneurs tend to be a little bit, I don't want to say the word egotistical, but they want to believe that the project won't go forward or can't survive if they're not doing it. That's not the right idea. That's not the leader's idea. That's not the right leadership mindset. Plan your successor, and at the same time, be looking for what is your next step. No one stays in the same place forever. Growth involves change. You should be grooming someone as you yourself are being groomed and prepared for your next step. And that's pretty much it for me for right now. Again, this is what I do. I'm dedicated to leadership, growth, and development. That's my MO, and that's what I enjoy doing. So let me get back on video with our wonderful host for now.
Sharon, thank you so much. I see our attendees were able to stay still the entire time, so that means it was good info. I just want to get into some questions that I have, and as a reminder, if you have questions, feel free to chat them. I will send them off to Sharon. But Sharon, there's so many things my brain is going through, because I'm an HR professional who exhibited entrepreneurship skills through various projects and initiatives. And although there wasn't a term entrepreneurship as I was coming up the ranks, it makes perfect sense now that there's a label for it. And now that I'm using those skills in the entrepreneurship realm, you couldn't be more right. I had so many notes that I just want to ask a couple of things. So there is a woman that I follow, researcher, academic. Her name is Brene Brown, which many people may know. And she talks about there being no courage without vulnerability. And you brought up courage. You said there has to be a level of courage in the entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship realm, because we know as women especially, we have to have courage to speak up, have to have courage to have our thoughts have to be comfortable enough to have our thoughts be communicated, because we can be an entrepreneur, but if no one knows we have the idea for Post-it notes at 3 a.m., then we don't know. And that's one of my favorite stories of entrepreneurship, is the Post-it note, because we all use it and we take it for granted, but that was also part of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
So tell me
Yes.
what you think about Brené's quote around, there is no courage without vulnerability.
I actually love Brene Brown, and I was listening to her book, I think it's Dare to Lead. And she talks about vulnerability. And what I like about what she had to say about that is people tend to protect themselves, and I think we think because being vulnerable means being weak. But I think Brene turns it on its head, that being vulnerable is actually being strong. It's being able to say, for example, that I may not be the best communicator. And she gives some examples about how she communicated with her team, and they were having misunderstandings. But being able to be weak is actually a strength. Humility is strength contained, strength reserved. That's really what humility is. And so I believe in vulnerability, in being able to say, hey, as I'm picking my team, this is not my strong area, but you are strong in this area, join my team. And being vulnerable enough to say, I don't have all the answers. That takes courage, but it's also effective, and people tend to be more endeared to you when they realize that you don't have all the answers, you're not super strong, and they actually can add value to you. And that's what I like about being vulnerable, in a genuine, authentic way, that is.
Right, because she also talks about vulnerability with no boundaries is not vulnerability, right? It's just the whole hot mess. It's doing too much, saying too much. So it's really that balance. I love what you just said. You said humility, I've never heard it put this way, humility is strength contained. And I love that, because if more people saw humility as strength contained, we could go further, right? A lot of times we get in our own way. When you talked about the entrepreneur or even the intrapreneur who feels like it won't get done if I don't do it. Delegation is a trick. It's a joke. And it really prevents many leaders from being the entrepreneur that they are really destined to be, or it prevents them from mentoring entrepreneurs, right? Like, just like children, our employees and our peers are looking at us for influence, for motivation, and for other intrinsic things. And if we're not able to exhibit that, then, what value are we really bringing to the table?
I find, and this is one of the difference between managers and leaders. A poor manager tends to be very protective of the position, okay? So they're not training anyone, because if someone is actually smarter or sharper, then they may not have a job. A true leader wants that next thing. They want that next step. So they're more keen into developing other leaders. People can step up and take their spot so that they can go on to the next spot. And that's something that I always caution people about. Like, listen, don't hug that position. Look at a position, give it a time frame. Even if you're enjoying it right now, say, you know what? I see myself, always be visioning your next step. That will keep you not so, tied in and married to where you are now, and will give your heart some more space to actually bring someone up to take over from you, so you can vacate that spot and go on to something that's bigger and better for you out there. There's no scarcity of opportunities. There's no scarcity of roles. Every day we're creating something, every day we're innovating. And when we become so entrenched, we're actually hurting ourselves. We're not hurting anyone else.
Absolutely. Again, my lengthy notes as you were talking, I wrote down, when you talked about self-awareness and emotional intelligence, I wrote my favorite little 3-word statement: know thyself. Some of us are innately built to look inward. And it doesn't mean we don't need external assistance, right? It doesn't mean because I have some comfort level in looking inward that I don't need the high performance coach, that I don't need the therapist, that I don't need the self-care, right? It just means you just have a leg up on the next person who may need more coaxing to look at where they're falling and where they're doing great and sort of that intersection. So I find that women, especially women in HR, are not as good at taking the tools available to them so that they can dig deeper, right? It's like, how many times do we administer assessments or recommend a mentor or recommend a coach for our leadership and for others? And when we're in spaces that we need, it's like, well, what do I do next? It's like, you already know what to do. You just aren't really applying it. So how do you help women apply the things they already know to help push them forward?
I think it starts with who you are at the core. And I talk a lot about core values. And this is why, even with self-awareness and self-assessment, you need to spend time with yourself, even as a practice, as a regular practice. Once a week, get quiet, sit still, listen to your inner voice. And if there's nothing coming back, still keep there and listen, because it may be that, I need to develop more as a person. Why am I not hearing anything from myself? Why am I not getting any inklings or anything at all? So as a regular practice, one should spend time with themselves. Become sensitive to listening. We talk too much. And as we're talking, we can't hear. We can't even hear we cannot hear others, and we cannot hear ourselves. Then I talk about personal development. Personal development is a personal decision. You said in HR, we may tell people, hey, get a mentor. We even pay for you to get a mentor. We pay for you to go on seminars and do courses. But if you don't have that within you yourself, if you don't have a personal desire to be developed, it won't matter. I've worked with people over the years in business, in my companies, and just as a consultant. And they're the companies who have education track available for their people. They never take it. It's not. The company can have it. You can lead a horse to water, always saying, but you can't force them to drink it. This has got to be a decision that you make, that you want to be better. You have to have a vision for your own personal self, your own personal growth, and an action plan really to get there. No one can give that to you. And it is that person who typically enlists the aid of a coach to help them get there further. So it really comes down to you. And so you have to really ask the question, what do I want out of life? I remember, Sana, when I was a young employee, I was 23 years old. I was working with American Express, in New York. And I remember there were some older women working there, and they had been in a particular role for decades.
Yeah.
Now, I had just gotten there. I was 6 months, I was already moved to a promotion. Young and hungry. I was 23 years old, young and hungry. And then I would ask these women, why don't you want to be a supervisor or a manager? They said, no, they're quite content to not have the stress and the struggles and the strain. They're quite content to remain where they are. It didn't matter the company was offering all these opportunities. It was what was within them. It's the same today. It has to come from within.
Absolutely. And I'll say a few things about that. I know a lot of women in HR that I come across, they are accustomed to having the organization fund those initiatives. And I find that a lot of growth is stunted when you don't have those resources, whether your organization is very strict about where their dollars go for improvement, professional development, personal development, and therefore it doesn't fit into the box you're trying to move into, i.e. coaching or other certification courses, etc. And so women are not investing in themselves. I find that it is so disheartening because I think we tell ourselves it costs too much. I don't know if there's value. What if I don't get anything out of it? We talk ourselves out of it. Now, I know there are lots of people that I talk to, whether it's my colleagues or just girlfriends, and it's like you can find money for Tahiti, but you can't find money to develop yourself. And there's no way to do it. Even if you saw a coach once a month, that's better than no times per month. And, and that to me is really important to remind people that you cannot put your development in life, personal or professional, on the current company that you're sitting at today, or even in your entrepreneurship, because today you may be thriving in the business, but what if your business needs you to switch gears? But because
That's
you
right.
haven't invested in yourself as an entrepreneur, you haven't taken that 1 hour marketing class online, you haven't gone down to the SBA, so Small Business Association Administration, to take that free or $35, content marketing, initiative, whatever it is. And so now all you've done was buried your head, you look up and you can't pivot. So have you been in a situation where you've seen that or experienced that personally?
I'm trying to hold back the laugh, but I shouldn't. And it's not funny, really. I mean, when I'm laughing, I'm just laughing at how commonplace this is.
Mm-hmm.
There are no lack of resources. Even online, there's so many free classes, free stuff, free information. This is the information age. It truly is. It really is. So why aren't we investing in ourselves? Goes back to that mindset. What script is playing in your head? And this is big because there are some of us, and this is unfortunate. I run across this a lot. There are these negative scripts. People are afraid of success. We always think about fear of failure, but fear of failure is big, but fear of success is perhaps even bigger. It comes from a lack of, I think, a lack of self-esteem in a way. People are afraid that they may outgrow their partners, they may outgrow their surroundings, they may outgrow their people, they may outgrow what's comfortable in their lives. So they self-sabotage. That I see a lot. I see this even with couples, unfortunately. The woman may be driven, the gentleman is not. Self-sabotage, and that's a hard one. And just in people groups. So it goes back to the mindset and that personal decision, What are the scripts that are playing? Are there scripts from childhood that say you'll never amount to anything? So no matter what they see in front of them, there's an overlaying script saying, well, you'll never amount to anything. You're not good enough. Women have so many negative voices in their heads, more than men. And it's just the way our society works, I guess. We look at our bodies, we look at our skin complexion, we look at so many things, and we find a reason to be negative. So we may see the resource, but we don't even try because we're already presuming we're going to fail, or we may think we may actually do this thing and be successful, and then what? What's going to happen to me? Who am I going to become? Will I become a person I don't even recognize? So people self-sabotage. I do see that quite a bit. So how do you get past that? It comes down to making that decision. Again, getting quiet and asking yourself the question, what do I want from me? Who did God create me to be?
Mm-hmm.
And just being honest. And if you say, I'm content being just at this level, then fine. But if there's more, then go be more, because it's there for everyone. It really is. This is a wonderful time for learning. You're doing this seminar right here. It's a wonderful time and you do this often. And there's so many platforms. It's an amazing time for learning. It's an amazing time for starting up your own business. It's just an amazing time in my experience. And I've been in business for 27 years. It's the best and the easiest time to get into business and to actually become successful in business because there's so much information out there to aid you.
Absolutely. It's a couple of things, and I want us both to share this because I like to leave people with real concrete examples of how things look in my life. So this is a moment of courage and vulnerability.
All right.
So, right. For me, how I take care of myself is I don't ever want to make excuses for not having access to things. I rely on apps. I use Iyanla Van Zant's app for daily motivation and principles. It is so therapeutic for me. I use it to center myself. Sometimes I feel really anxious, and so I need something to bring me in. And sometimes it's not the phone call to the best friend or the sister or the mom. Sometimes you have to be with yourself and get centered. And so I use her app to center me. I also use the Calm app to meditate every morning. The woman's voice, Tamara Levitt, I don't know what her voice does. It is so, so soothing for me. But that has taught me to be still. It's also she's taught me about how to have imperfect but perfect meditation. And I commit to those things, not every day. And I stop beating myself up that I don't commit every day. It is there when I need it. I will forget, I'm busy. And that's the other thing, is allowing ourselves margin for error. I've had to basically beat myself into submission, lots of self-care, lots of reminders that I don't have to do it perfectly every day to get it right. And that's just it. So what do you do in terms of taking care of yourself? What are like a couple of things you do just to get with yourself or to center?
Well, to be vulnerable too, I also do use a Calm app, and I use an app called Headspace. And I also go on Google, actually YouTube, and listen to meditation. I love meditating. I'm also a person of faith. So my morning routine involves getting up early, getting into the Bible, reading, praying, sitting still, asking questions, and listening for answers. I also walk a lot. I'm a big walker. So I'll do 4 miles to 5 miles each morning if I can.
Oh.
And I will walk and jog. Because for me, when I walk and I jog, here's what I say to myself. I affirm certain things. I affirm that walking would mean that I would eliminate certain pills, because it's helping my blood pressure. It's going to help my A1C levels. It's going to help. It's a health. My walking is for health. Having a good body is a side component, but health is the primary. So when I walk, even if it's cold, I've just moved to a cold climate, I still walk. Yes, it helps with the cortisol levels going down, prepare me for the day. I also get a lot of downloads and insights when I'm walking. So that's important to me. So, and then as a married woman, I make sure that my husband and I have a date night to try to keep that balance, because sometimes when you are an A-type woman, or if you're smart, like I'm sure your audience, members are that way, you want to just keep that balance at home. So I make sure I date my husband still. We've been married for 32 years. So once per week, we're going to do something fun and easy. And it's not about business. It's not about, the next thing I'm working on. It's about us. And this just helps to keep me balanced. I try to check it with my kids, spend time with them, just to keep that balance in my life, where I'm not too much out here on a project or any mission, but I'm just, I'm trying to keep it all balanced. But really, if we're not taking care of ourselves, now we can't take care of anybody else. So my self-care routine is very, very, it's really number one for me. I've gotten to the place where I can say no to my kids, no to everyone else, and yes to me on a very consistent basis. And I would just encourage your audience to begin to say yes to themselves even more. Meditation and being quiet is so good. In this anxiety-filled, stress-laden world, we need that time to really regroup and refresh and take vacation, even if it's mini ones, Fridays and Mondays, off together, just to regenerate. Our brains need to stop working and just do silly stuff, regenerate ourselves.
Sharon, we need a whole separate conversation for all of this. As you're talking, these are all the things that I learned, I knew, but it took some really head beating against walls during this entrepreneurship journey to sort of do those things. About a month and a half ago, one of my HR girlfriends, who's actually a girlfriend, is the HR director at a museum here in Maryland. And she's been telling me, come. It's modern art. It's beautiful. It's the largest private museum. It's called Glenstone here. And I took a Friday. I was feeling overwhelmed, lots of stuff on my desk. I shut it all down and I went to the museum and did a whole tour by myself. What an amazing Friday. It was so relaxing. It is not something I would have done, honestly, had I not felt the amount of pressure, but I'm working on doing those things without the pressure. So it's like, I'm proud of myself for getting it done, but I was under a lot of pressure. So how do I get there one day at a time prior to pressure so that I'm really living that work-life balance you talked about? But Sharon, I have to have you back. I have to have you back so we can talk more about high performance coaching and all the things that women need to know. I thank you so much for your time. I know I've learned a lot, and I hope that everyone who's watching live has learned a lot. If you're watching this as a recording, you will be able to find Sharon Gill. We will have her information above or below, depending on what medium you're watching this on, and look for Sharon and some future content.
All right. It was a pleasure being here. I enjoyed every moment of it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sharon. Take care.